Good morning. I want to call to order the special call meeting, May 5th of the Fish and Wildlife Commission. I want to welcome Commissioner Storm, Deputy Commissioner Clark, those from the cabinet who are in attendance, and especially my fellow commissioners who I gave short notice to, who probably need to get back, and the public who's also glad to be here, I'm sure, and I hope that they will benefit from the meeting. In the interest of the time that these gentlemen need to get back to work and the time constraint that we are under to act on the agenda today, I wanted to get right into the meat of our agenda today, which is only one subject, and that's how we're going to answer a complaint of an open meetings violation that we've recently received. I want to give a short timeline of how some of the events have occurred, both for some of the commissioners that I have not talked to, as well as the public, so they'll know where we stand with this. I've called this special meeting today to seek permission from the commission to procure an attorney to answer a complaint of an open meetings violation that is being alleged by an individual. On April the 19th, I received a complaint from an individual concerning the proceedings of a January 2020 meeting of the commission, as well as meetings of the commission in April of this year. I responded immediately to his complaint, and in my response, I explained that several staff attorneys, as well as cabinet attorneys, always attended our meetings, both open and closed session. And I was confident that we probably had not violated any procedural problems with open meetings law, because those attorneys were always in our presence. At approximately 4 p.m. on April the 20th, I received an email from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife staff attorney, Stephen Fields, that advising me that in the event that there was any formal complaint, that he would not be able to represent us. Shortly after that, I contacted the head counsel for the cabinet, Sarah Cronin, and asked that for a Zoom meeting with she, Evan Jones, who is a cabinet attorney, Mr. Fields, and Deputy Commissioner Clark, and she arranged a Zoom meeting shortly thereafter, and I was able to visit with them. I broached the subject of why our attorney, who is paid by the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, would be unable to respond to the complaint in letter form, and Ms. Cronin suggested that the reason they couldn't was because of ongoing litigation between the commission as well as the cabinet. On May the 3rd, at approximately 3 p.m., I received a letter from the Attorney General's office notifying the commission that they had received an official complaint from the same individual alleging open meetings violations. The Attorney General's office advised that the commission had 3 days to respond to the complaint. I then forwarded all the commission members of the 2 letters that I received that day from the Attorney General's office late in the afternoon of the same day that I received them. After consulting with Vice Chairman Paul Horn, and I'm asking for your approval to have an attorney answer the file complaint before 3 p.m. Thursday. Since Aaron Saletto from the Attorney General's office is representing the commission in other legal proceedings, he is unable to represent us in the matter of this complaint that was filed to his office, because he was afraid there would be a conflict with him representing us and this complaint being filed with the Attorney General's office. Our biggest problem comes from the fact that our public has to be notified 24 hours in advance of a call meeting like we're doing today. So we lost one of the 3 days there. Today is the 2nd day, and we have until 3 p.m. tomorrow, if you all will allow us to respond to this, if the commission responds to this complaint. We have until 3 p.m. tomorrow to reply to that complaint, and so we're under considerable time constraint. So the purpose of the meeting today is to seek that permission to try to be able to respond from the complaint at the Attorney General's before the time runs out at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So that's the reason I have invited you here, gentlemen, is to ask for that permission to seek some help in responding to this. So I'll open up the floor to discussion or questions that you all may have concerning our needs to respond to this.
Chairman Kleiner, can I just elaborate a little bit on the nature of the conflict?
The conflict, well, yes, but I think to some, with all due respect, Ms. Cronin, some of it is kind of a moot point, because no matter how you get to where you're going to tell me how it all happened, it's still not, you're not going to represent us, right? You're not going to.
That's correct, but I thought it would be helpful for the commission. It would be helpful for the commission members to understand that as licensed attorneys, we are all bound by rules of professional conduct. And those rules require us to identify if there's any conflict of interest in any representation we're asked to undertake. And as you mentioned, in this instance, there is a conflict because of the ongoing litigation by the commission against the tourism cabinet and the attorneys that work for and under the tourism cabinet. So I just wanted everybody to understand that this is an issue based on our attorney rules of professional conduct. Thank you for letting me address that.
Yes, ma'am, but the fact still remains that you are not going to be able to help us respond to this. That's correct? That's correct,
and we advised you of that fact on April 20th, and you and I had a conversation about that.
Yes, ma'am, I just said that on April 20th, I was advised that you all would not be able, but you told us that your advice was to seek legal counsel somewhere else in order to respond. If you recall from our conversation, my concern was that the attorney that is on staff for us, whose salary is paid from Fish and Wildlife funds, is not allowed back to represent us because of the restriction that you all have put on him. Is that correct?
It's the restriction of the professional rules of conduct that applies to all attorneys. We identified that a conflict existed given the ongoing litigation, and that conflict applies to all attorneys that work in the cabinet or for the cabinet.
Okay. Well, and its agencies. So again, I'm not trying to argue with you, Ms. Cronin, but he works for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. We are not in litigation with him. We're in litigation with the cabinet and with administration and finance. We are not in litigation with him. He works for the Kentucky. Matter of fact, his title is staff attorney for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. So he works for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. I know you are, or we are, what you call attached to the cabinet, but he works for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. So he has really no, in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, he has no legal ties as far as not being able to represent us, in my opinion, like you would as a cabinet individual who's involved in being named in the suit. So that's just a difference of our opinions, and I guess we'll have to work that out later.
Well, it's the same conflict that's presented by the Attorney General, Mr. Saletta. So it's the same thing. Okay. So that's all I can say.
Okay, I appreciate your comments. Thank you, ma'am. Paul Horn, you had something, you had raised your hand.
I was going to ask Sarah, Ms. Cronin, a question, but she answered it. I was just trying to understand how there was a conflict with Mr. Fields.
Did you hear that, Ms. Cronin?
I've answered that question now twice.
Okay.
I said that was, I raised my hand what time you were discussing it.
Any other questions that you all have or comments anybody needs to make here? Kenny, did you have something? Did you move up there? Anybody? Doug, you have something to say? We can't hear you, Doug. You need to turn your speaker on. We cannot hear you, Doug.
How about now?
We can hear you now, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I've been trying to take notes and keep up with this. And correct me if I've misspoken here, but there's been a complaint filed that we violated the open meeting law, and that And when we had this meeting, Stephen Fields, our attorney, instructed us on how to do this. And now Stephen Fields says he can't represent us because there's been a complaint filed against us. And the tourism cabinet has recommended that we get an outside attorney. And we have to answer this by 3 o'clock, Tuesday, May 6th.
No,
If that's correct.
3 o'clock, May the 6th.
Yeah, 3 o'clock, May the 6th.
That's Thursday.
Oh, excuse me?
That's Thursday, not Tuesday.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up. It's pretty complicated. So the commission is pretty much forced into hiring an outside counsel. We don't have time to search for one. We don't have time to negotiate with one. We need an attorney to file an answer to this right away. And let me say, as a layperson, I'm deeply, deeply distressed over how this whole operation has come together with these attorneys. You know, I'm not an attorney, but it's my opinion that this is a classic case of the foxes guarding the hen house. They've led us to this and then condemned us for doing it. And it's my opinion that that's a shame. That is a shame. So I would like to make the following motion. I would like to say, I've done this for notes. The commission authorizes its chairman to retain legal services. No, let me start over. The commission authorizes its chairman to retain services of legal counsel to file a response on behalf of the department at such reasonable fees as are customary and usual, not to exceed $250 an hour.
Does everybody understand the motion? Is there a second to that motion? Kenny Knox seconds that motion. Is there discussion concerning that motion or any portion of that motion?
I would like to clarify one thing. The attorney who was present at the April meetings of this year was not cabinet attorneys or fish and wildlife attorneys. It was Mr. Soletto from the AG's office, and he was advising the commission at that time. Mr. Fields was not the attorney advising the commission at the January 2020 meeting. It was Mr. Jones. And I wasn't even aware of this special meeting and what the content and what the discussions were at the special meeting in January 2020 until 15 minutes before it was convened, when I was informed of the topic by Mr. Jones. So let's just be clear on the facts, Mr. Morgan.
Well, I assume that we posted some day before what the meeting was going to be about, or the closed session. Are you talking about the closed session, Ms. Drummond? Or are you talking about the open session?
I'm talking about the closed session at the January 2020 meeting.
And at the closed session in the April one that you say no attorney was there, you all had, if you remember, to let represent whoever you wanted to put in there that day.
That's not correct. We had no attorney present. The commission was represented by Mr. Soletto.
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong was present. He is not an attorney that practices for the Commonwealth. He was present from an HR perspective.
Okay, but you all could have chosen an attorney to be there, right? I mean, nobody.
No, we couldn't, because you were discussing litigation. That is not correct.
Well, we told you.
That's my understanding, that litigation was being discussed, and because it was the litigation adverse to the cabinet, we were not permitted in the room.
Well, yes.
And Mr. Soletto advised you of that fact before you went into closed session.
But what he told us, it was that we would welcome an attorney being there, but at the time that we had the attorney-client privilege time, they would have to recuse themselves from the meeting. So he stayed for a while, and then when we got down to the client and attorney privilege portion, he left the meeting. So an attorney could have done the same thing from the cabinet. You all just chose Mr. Armstrong to be there, for whatever reason you did, because any attorney would have been welcome in there until the time we got down to attorney-client privilege. And then we would have asked him to leave, just like Mr. Armstrong was kind enough to do. He left at the time that was discussed, but he could have been there for the rest of it. But there was an attorney present during the open meeting portion of that, right?
To be clear, cabinet attorneys and fish and wildlife attorneys were not asked to represent the commission at the April meetings. In fact, the script that was provided was not provided by the cabinet or the department attorneys. It was, I don't know where you got it from, but in any event, we were not advising the commission at the April 2021 meetings.
Well, if I read a statement, it is from our attorney. If I read the statement that we open into closed session, it's the same one that we read, except it's whether it deals with land acquisition or personnel issues. It's the very same one, Mr. Cronin. Before we go on to this motion, since you're talking about that, and we're spending a lot of time talking about how we got there instead of where we've got to go from here. I will tell you, I have served now 5 years, and it is disturbing to me, like it seems to be to Mr. Morgan, that in the 5 years I have been on the commission, we have had attorneys at every meeting, whether it's during the closed session, where it's during the open session, and 99% of the time, an attorney has been present at the closed session. And several, I can remember one time, I counted mentally that there were 4 attorneys present. So we have a bevy of attorneys present at most of these meetings, who they tell us whose purpose is to watch over the proceedings, to see that we do everything from Robert's Rules of Order to procedurally correct for open meetings. I find it disturbing that for the 5 years that I have served, this is the first complaint we've ever had. And it's the first time that our own attorney has refused to respond to the complaint. So it's the only time in 5 years that I've served that we've had a complaint for Open Meetings Act. And it's the first time that somebody has refused to represent us that works for this agency. With that being said, we'll discuss that at another occasion. At this point, I have any other discussion about the motion that's been made by Mr. Morgan at this point? And it has been seconded. No further discussion. Mr. Morgan, for the sake of clarity, would you please read your motion again in its entirety, just the motion part, before I call on a vote from the commission?
Okay, I will try. I wrote this as we did this.
Okay.
The commission authorizes its chairman to retain services of legal counsel to file a response on behalf of the department at such reasonable fees as are customary and usual, not to exceed $250 per hour.
I understand that motion. Everybody has now heard it for the second time. I will put that to a vote. Now, all in favor of that motion, please signify by raising your hand.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
Carl, can I ask just one more question on this? Is it going to have to go through a contract process, or what? Are we going to get tripped up there? That's the other question.
That's what I'm going to let you guys know. Just be very cautious, because it will need to go through the procurement process, which is going to take more than 2 or 3 days. So I would just caution you, everybody, with that process, because that's a process that we need to go through.
So how are we supposed to proceed with this if we got to respond by 2 a.m. Thursday?
No, 2 p.m. Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m.
Yeah, 2 p.m. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Ms. Board, thank you for your comments. Can you give us your advice, since legal counsel is not able to? Can you give us your advice as to how we can answer the complaint in a timely fashion by 3 o'clock tomorrow without?
That's something.
So would it be, in your opinion, okay for me to get a little advice about how to respond, and then I respond personally, other than the first response I had before it became a formal complaint? I just responded that since we have attorneys with us for each of these meetings, and they tell us part of their purpose for being there is to make sure that we conduct the meeting correctly, and that we follow Robert's Rules of Order and such, and answer any legal questions that we may have. That's the whole idea of their presence there for the meetings. I felt pretty confident that that would satisfy his query. As a result, though, of the May 3 letter from the Attorney General, that did not satisfy his complaint. and then he filed a formal complaint. Now, as far as the answer, I know that by tomorrow, if I'm not able to hire an attorney between now and tomorrow, which would be very difficult anyway, will my answer, even if I have to look up some of the legal jargon, will my answer be sufficient for the Attorney General as long as I respond, or can you respond to that, Ms. Board?
Sarah, what do you think about that? What would be how would he respond to that?
I think he needs to just talk to your finance folks. I'm not an expert on procurement. There may be provisions for emergency procurement. I don't know. I think there's also other restrictions on the amount that you can pay outside legal counsel pursuant to the Commonwealth procurement rules. But I would, I would think Tim Wired would know.
Yeah.
Or Lisa Cox.
And I certainly don't mean to sound disrespectful to administration and finance, but we've had things held up there for some time. I don't think I can get a response in the next 2 or 3 hours from finance as to how to proceed.
No, I'm talking about your finance folks.
Yeah.
The Fish and Wildlife finance folks.
Okay.
Inside the office there.
Okay, I thought you were talking about.
I just don't want to go down to a process that's going to keep getting us in trouble and keep getting us.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, that's what I like. I just don't want to keep getting into where there's going to be complaints and complaints and complaints. It doesn't do us any good. I'm sitting here, I'm trying to get WMA working groups going, and we're having to take our time to deal with this. And I have a limited amount of time, and my task is to work on fish and wildlife. And every time this comes back to something like this, it takes away my free time and ability to help the sportsmen and women of the Commonwealth get things done and do the things that they have tasked us and our obligation are. And I don't want to keep kicking this down the road, but I'm really struggling internally to how we do this, where it's not going to be another complaint and another complaint and another complaint, but still comply with the laws of the Commonwealth and do this timely. If we go get an attorney, we have to respond. We need legal representation. We don't have it right now. We need somebody to respond, but if we can't procure it in a timely manner, then we're going to get a complaint for not timely responding. And if we do it in the wrong manner, we're going to get a complaint and it does none of our sportsmen and women any good with this situation. I just want to figure out what's the best resolution, get a response so we can get back to do what we've been tasked to do as a commission, which I think we have been doing a good job getting things done.
Brian, I understand and feel your frustration. And like I said, I would go back to your procurement folks in-house and talk with those guys and get their guidance so that you don't have to go over to finance and deal with that. You can deal with it right in-house as far as what you need to provide a response back in a timely manner, because I understand you're in a crunch. But to get that back in a timely manner, work within your own inside folks. They should be able to help you with that and with the verbiage, Chairman Kleiner.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because I understand the frustration, but I want you guys to maneuver in the right way. Because again, you don't want to keep going back and forth. I know that.
No, we definitely want to maneuver in the right way,
Exactly.
but then still comply with getting a response.
I know you do. That would be my recommendation, definitely, to be able to respond very quickly, because I understand you are in a time crunch right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments before we put this to a vote? You've heard the motion now for the second time. All in favor of the motion made by Doug Morgan, please raise your hand.
Can we just have him read it one more time? I apologize. I just want to
please read that motion one more time, and then we're going to put it to a vote.
I would love to. I would also make a comment before I read it again. If any commissioner thinks that we're not going to be barraged by complaints from this day forward like we have been for the last 2 years, you're living in a dream world, buddy. And my motion is this. The commission authorizes its chairman to retain services of legal counsel to file a response on behalf of the department at such reasonable fees as are customary and usual, not to exceed $250 per hour.
can I make an amendment?
No,
No,
not at this point. Not at this point. After this one, you can add, you can make another motion, but instead of adding an amendment this time, because that's the third reading, I want to get a vote on that. And then if you have other business to add to that, we'll have to do it in another motion. Because I'm not going to go back now and amend his third time, because we've heard it third times and had 2 discussions on that. So all in favor, signify by raising your hand to that motion. All against that motion, please signify by raising your hand now. One against, motion carries. If there's no other business, or Brian, what other motion would you like to make?
No, I was just gonna make the motion that instead of not to exceed 250, that it does not exceed state law, whatever the allowable rule for state law.
I think that would go without saying now.
Okay.
In other words, that's put in there, but I think that would go without saying, because Sarah has reminded us there may be a high end on that, so we'll follow that. I think that figure is okay, but I believe that the high end of that would be, we'll follow the state law or whatever that is. Yes, Paul.
Since you're there today, can you, is the right person Lisa Cox on our side?
I don't know if she's on site today. I'm looking at the commissioner, and he says he thinks she is. I will try to get in touch with her as soon as we close this meeting out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Because that's the only thing we had on the agenda today. I'll entertain a motion to dismiss the meeting. Paul, go ahead, Paul.
Make the motion to dismiss.
Make a motion. Josh, do you second that motion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The ayes carry it. Meeting adjourned.